Welcome to this introduction on how to replace the ball bearings and the mechanical shaft seal on a pump type QV10-300. For your safety, please be certain the motor is switched off and there's no pressure on the pump. First, you have to remove the coupling guard. This can be done after unscrewing the 4 balls. To secure a correct final assembly of the pump, put a mark on the motor coupling and the pump coupling. Also mark the top part of the bearing lantern and the pump casing. Now you can unscrew and remove the 4 balls from the motor coupling. Work the motor coupling loose. Next, loosen the 4 balls in the cover. As the gasket may be suitable for reuse, loosen it carefully with a knife. Now you can remove the cover. Next, you can perform the same procedure on the seal cover. Lift the seal cover carefully. Now it's time to open the pump casing. Knock the 2 guide pins loose with a hammer. Next, loosen and remove the 14 of the 16 nuts in the pump casing. The last 2 are to hold the front of the pump casing in place. Also remove the 14 washers. Now loosen the remaining 2 nuts. To make the front of the casing slip, place 2 lifting balls. When tightening the 2 lifting balls, the pump casing will open. Now you can remove the remaining 2 nuts and washers. And the front of the pump casing can be removed. Loosen the 4 balls in the 2 bearing lanterns. When removing the 2 bearing brackets, prevent the rotating element to fall out. Before removing the rotating element, note the position of the 2 grease nipples, and then remove the element. Having the pump casing open, you can remove the old gaskets. Make a proper cleaning, removing loose dirt and excess oil. Alcohol spray will ease the cleaning. Finally, wipe off with a dry cloth. Now the pump casing is ready for a new pair of gaskets. First, make a test ensuring the gaskets are of the right size. Add glue or similar liquid to the tightening surface of the pump casing. Place the 2 gaskets on the pump casing. Next, add anti-seize compound paste or spray on the front of the gaskets. And you can remount the front of the pump casing. Place 6 nuts ready for holding the front into place. For securing the right position of the front, install the 2 guide pins into their slots. Now tighten the 6 nuts to spread the glue evenly and let the glue dry. Now it's time to disassemble the rotating element. First, remove the 2 casing wear rings. Then place the shaft in a vise. Now you can remove the retaining ring from the bottom of the shaft. Next, lift off the impeller. The key can be loosened with a hammer and a chisel. Loosen the spacer with an Allen key. Now you have access to pull off the spacer, the mechanical shaft seal, the seal cover, and the thrower. Get access to the ball bearing by loosening the 4 balls in the bearing cover. Remove the balls. And pull the bearing cover apart. You need a puller for removing the ball bearing. Remove the ball bearing and the bearing cover. Turn the shaft 180 degrees to attend the second ball bearing. First, loosen the motor coupling with an Allen key. Then remove the motor coupling with a puller. Open the bearing cover by loosening the 4 balls. Remove the bearing cover. And unlock the lock washer with a hammer and a screwdriver. Now the bearing can be loosened with a hook wrench and a hammer. Unscrew the bearing nut and remove the lock washer. The bearing house is loosened with a puller. And remove the bearing house and ball bearing from the shaft. Remove the 4 oil seal rings with a screwdriver and a hammer. Wipe the elements clean of old grease with a clean, dry cloth. Be sure to match the 4 new oil seal rings. Notice the spring direction in each ring. Now add grease to the bearing covers and houses before installing the oil seal rings. Make sure to position the oil seal rings correctly before knocking into place. The old seal rings and the old ball bearings can be thrown away. Remove gaskets from the seal covers. Remove the stationary seat ring from the seal cover. Wipe old grease off the two seal covers with a clean dry cloth. Match sizes of the new stationary seat ring and the mechanical shaft seal to the old ones. Add liquid soap as lubricant to the seal cover before installation of the stationary seat ring. Now press the stationary seat ring into the seal cover. Add grease to the seal cover with a small brush and put the gasket on top. Place the second gasket on top of end cover. With a dry cloth, wipe excess grease off the seal cover. Wipe the shaft clean. Use some alcohol spray for better cleaning. Match the motor coupling to the bearing house with the edge on the side. Before going further, be sure the new ball bearing fits the casing. And then heat the center of the ball bearing to 60 degrees Celsius above room temperature. Now it's time to rebuild the rotating element. Place the bearing house on the shaft and add grease to the shaft. When the desired temperature of the ball bearing has been reached, add grease. And place the ball bearing on the shaft with the greasy side facing the casing. The ball bearing has to be knocked into place with an installation tool. Now mount the lock washer and the bearing nut on the shaft. Screw the bearing nut tight and fasten it with a hook wrench. Lock the lock washer with a mandrel and a hammer. Knock the casing into place with a plastic hammer. Wipe the casing clean and add grease to the top of the ball bearing. Close the casing by placing the bearing cover on top of the casing. Mount the 4 balls in the bearing cover and screw them tight. Lubricate the shaft with anti-seize compound. Next, mount the warm motor coupling approximately 100 degrees Celsius and knock it into place with a plastic hammer. It's important that the motor coupling and the top of the shaft are aligned. Tighten the motor coupling to the shaft with an Allen key. Match the size of the second ball bearing and heat the center to 60 degrees Celsius above room temperature. Turn the shaft around in the vise and place the bearing cover and add grease to the shaft. When desired temperature has been reached, add grease to the ball bearing. Now place the ball bearing on the shaft with the greasy side facing the bearing cover. Knock the bearing carefully into place with a hammer and a mandrel, made of a softer material than the bearing. And add grease to the top of the ball bearing. Place the bearing house on top of the ball bearing and knock it carefully into position with a plastic hammer. For closing the bearing casing, mount the 4 balls and screw them tight. Wipe the shaft clean with a dry clean cloth. Be aware to place the thrower having the V-shape facing the bearing casing. To avoid any grease on surfaces, rinse the seal cover and the mechanical shaft seal with the alcohol on a dry clean cloth. Now place the seal cover on the shaft, gasket facing away from the bearing casing. Add liquid soap as lubricant to the mechanical shaft seal. Now place the mechanical shaft seal and the spacer on the shaft. The spacer is to be tightened later. Add grease to the keyway before installing the key with a plastic hammer. Place one of the 2 casing wear rings over the shaft and add grease to the shaft. Now you can place the impeller over the key on the shaft. And for holding the impeller in fixed position, place the retaining ring and tighten the 6 screws. Assembly of the rotating element is done and it can be removed from the vise. At the tightening surfaces of the pump casing, remove exceeding gasket from the pump casing with a file. Now the pump casing has to be reopened. Remove the 2 guide pins from the pump casing. Unscrew and remove the 6 balls from the front of the pump casing. Now you can remove the casing cover of the pump casing. Before putting the rotating element back into place, you have to cut away exceeding parts of the gaskets with a knife. For a proper result, refine the gasket cutting with a file. Cut grooves in the gaskets for the 2 casing wear rings. It's also important to check all the flexible elements in the motor coupling. Replace worn with new ones. Once again, wipe the pump casing clean before replacing the rotating element. Spray tightening surfaces with anti-seize compound. Wipe off anti-seize compound from the parts connecting to the rotating element. Now the pump casing is ready for the rotating element. Secure the element with the top bearing lantern. Reposition second wear ring and put both the casing wear rings in correct position. Now you can reposition the second bearing lantern. Before going further, be sure the grease nipples and bearing lanterns are repositioned in the right spots. While tightening the bolts in the 2 bearing lanterns, make sure the element rotates freely. Next, add Loctite to the stop screw for the spacer and tighten it with an Allen key. Wipe exceeding Loctite off spacer and press the mechanical shaft seal into right position. Be sure the gasket is fitted correctly to the seal cover. Before mounting the front of the pump casing, place casing wear rings in the right position. Spray anti-seize compound on top of the pump casing and remove the two lifting balls. Now you are ready to reposition the front of the pump casing. Hold the front into place with 2 washers and 2 nuts. To ensure the right position of the front of the pump casing, knock the 2 guide pins into place. Now you can reposition the remaining washers and nuts on the pump casing. Before tightening the 16 nuts, check for free rotation of the shaft. After tightening, check for free rotation again. Next, you have to reposition the end cover with the 4 washers and balls and tighten them. Now reposition the seal cover with the 4 washers and balls and tighten them. After tightening the seal cover, check again for free rotation. Check the connecting parts of the motor coupling are in the right position. Reposition the 4 balls in the motor coupling and tighten them. Finally, reposition the coupling guard and tighten the 4 balls. And you're done.